Hello, everyone. I'll be talking today about how it is like to be going into the wild and solving wicked problems. Before I start off, a little something about me, why I do what I do. So basically, I am an industrial designer, and by education, my expertise lie in product design. But over the time, once you realize that most of the problems that you pick in Pakistan can be solved through reconfiguring the systems, redesigning the service, as opposed to just putting a new solution in or a new product in. So the idea was, because in doing so, you are wasting, at certain point, you are wasting a lot of resources. So it's important to just utilize what you have at some point. So I became very fond of the idea of social innovation. And one of the best things about that was that in relevance to the problem at hand, you basically are utilizing a whole ecosystem. And how to solve that, you identify the problems within that ecosystem and then try to fix the problems in it. But furthermore, you're also enabling that ecosystem to run on its own. So in the end, what you are doing is that you are making that system self-sustaining. And in doing, and further, what you have done is that any intervention that you are putting in has become self-sustaining and you're wasting minimum resources. So yes, I was actually very, very fond of this idea and I wanted to work further in it, but it does require a very extensive user research. So luckily for me, I stumbled upon IDEATE, design consultancy firm that specializes in user-centered design. And ever since then, I have been working on the multiple projects all related to social innovation. One of them was redesigning the wayfinding system in the Fauci Foundation Hospital. Another one was digitizing the procurement processes of the agribusinesses. And the third one was accelerating post-MA medical abortion contraceptive uptake amongst women. And this is the project that I'll be talking about today in relevance to how we were solving this particular wicked problem. In order to define the scope of the problem, first, medical abortion basically is a process through which process to terminate the pregnancy through the use of pills. And this method was actually introduced in the world and in Pakistan as an alternative to other surgical methods of abortion that were far more dangerous. So you were kind of solving that problem, but another problem sort of started following this one, which was that a lot of women in the rural population of Pakistan started relying on abortion pills as a contraceptive method. And one of the reasons was that they were not using contraceptives. So delving deeper into why they were not using contraceptives, there were three prominent reasons amongst that. Extra reliance on abortion pills as a contraceptive method because of convenience. Now, because abortion pills and using those pills can be self-administered in the end, so a lot of women felt that they can discreetly go through this process without letting anybody know. And in the end, it seemed convenient than actually using contraceptives. The second was the paranoia around use of contraceptives because of prevailing myths and misconceptions. Now, contraceptives have some side effects that over the time got exaggerated in a sense that people started thinking that it is gonna cause major changes to the body. And now currently we are facing a lot of myths and misconceptions. One of the very common ones being the infertility, that contraceptives will cause infertility amongst the women. And thus, that leads to a lot of resistance when it comes to using them. The third one, stigma around matters related to abortion and contraceptives makes it difficult for women to acquire any information. Now there's a big stigma around this topic, around topics related to SRH, that is sexual reproductive health, and contraceptives and abortion in particular. So if nobody wants to talk about it, how do you acquire information about it? So that was one of that was few of the problems that we had identified initially. And now why this problem is considered complex is that ideally, if you increase the accessibility and visibility of contraceptive services, let's say, its ideal trajectory of the married population in rural areas should go something like this. But reality is far off from that ideal. And the reason is, and in order to bridge that gap between real and ideal, you have to be looking at other factors like increasing health awareness amongst the women, increasing their economic stability, or providing that kind of confidentiality they need. And a lot of these problems are also considered to be wicked problems. So it's like a complex structure of wicked problems that we are trying to find our way around. Lastly, whenever we sort of come up with a solution, it may have an undesirable effect as well. For example, once we increase the visibility of a contraceptive, there may be a chance that there will be the social acceptability around that will reduce, and we will be facing a lot of backlash. One of the reasons is that people think that if the contraceptives are easily available, it will promote sexual activity amongst the unmarried population. And Pakistan as a country does not allow that. So what happens is that, so there is a big backlash that we will face if we start improving the accessibility and visibility of contraceptives. So in order to solve that problem, initially I talked about how you are working within a certain ecosystem. And then I further talked about a stigma that is around certain topic. So we decided to, before going to the field, we decided to come up with a combination of tools that can help defeat that stigma in a way that women can start trusting us with their abortion journeys. One of the ways was to map out the whole ecosystem that we suspect is enabling the woman or assisting the woman in their abortion journeys. So in this, we included mother's house, friend's house, then we had a lady health worker's house. Lady health workers are basically community workers who are working on promoting contraceptive uptake amongst these women. And they basically provide all the information the woman needs. Then we have dispensaries, we had medical stores, clinics, so all these places. The idea was for the women, we placed this map in front of the women and we asked them to start mapping tracing their journeys out through the use of thread. What that helped us out was to map out the sequence of events that were leading to her abortion, and furthermore, delving deeper into who, when, where, what, why, and how was she going about it. So whenever she used to stop at a place, we used to try making her talk further about who was helping her out, when did she go there, or what did she do there. So this basically helped us find these areas and delve deeper into what was happening there and how can these places become into opportunity areas for us. And further, also helping the women to narrate their stories. So using that map, we were able to structure the problem down. In a very general, one of the journeys that we came across was that the woman went to a private clinic, the doctor prescribed her some medicine that will cause abortion. Woman who got unintentionally pregnant, went to the private clinic, was prescribed the medicines. She had those medicines, but they did not work. So she decided to go to a friend's place and ask help from her. Her friend told her about this other drug that she then purchased from the pharmacy and from the pharmacy. And turns out that she was not aware about the effects that the abortion pills are going to cause on her body. And once she started feeling those, so you can see that how her emotional journey goes from neutral to immediately to frustrated. Now she's at the hospital with certain complications. And once those complications are treated, she goes back to the hospital to see if she can adopt a contraceptive method. But the end of the journey is an unsuccessful adoption of contraceptives because she was told she was too young. So these series of events and these places that we see here got flagged for us, because what could they have done to contribute in a successful adoption of contraceptives? Because that became important. Once the woman has gone through an abortion, it's difficult for her to go out and seek information regarding contraceptives because she feels like she's going to be judged by the society. So these flagged areas for us became branches that we had to further delve deeper into what was happening in these places. But again, there was the frequency of visits to a lot of places that was everywhere. Basically, they were going to backstreet clinics, they were going to dispensaries, they were going to their friend's house, they were going to lady health worker or on the internet. So it was up to us to prioritize by quantitatively looking at things, quantitatively looking at the clinic, at where the most footfall of these users lie and where can we have the most impact on their journeys by intervening. So the first one, for example, we had medical stores, and the reason women were going there directly was that first, there are chances that they will easily acquire the drug, and also their drugstores are very accessible. But the problems identified there was bias, certain biases against unmarried population. There was counseling was provided at that time of purchase, in which we felt could be one of the opportunity areas. Another thing was at easy accessibility about the health houses. Now, health houses are the houses of the community health workers. Now, and a lot of women want to go to lady health workers for, in particular, because they have friendly ties with them, and they know for a fact that their journey will remain as discreet as possible. So the element of confidentiality became very important. The problems identified again was that there was contraceptive stock shortage, there was biased counseling, outdated information amongst the users, because apparently the lady health worker program is there, but they have had no refresher training, so their information they have regarding contraceptives is very outdated. The third one, we have clinics. And again, easy accessibility, they're private clinics, they can get quick checkup and better service, but even there, the focus on post-MA, post-abortion contraceptive counseling is minimal. And again, the biased counseling is a part of it as well. So of that tool, the journey mapping tool, basically could not have worked on its own. Because again, making them talk about their abortion journey was, we had to really make sure that they trust us. There were certain tools that we started using that we thought that maybe, using these tools, they would be so immersed in the activity that they will let their instincts answer the question rather than they thinking too much about it. One of them was the trust circle. Now, we placed these stickers in front of them. The sticker said a husband, a lady health worker, friend, or anything. And we asked them to place these stickers in the circles, in the relevant circles. So the innermost circle was the closest ones to speak to. If it comes to her abortion, who will she be speaking to? Then we have the second closest one, and then the third closest one. The results were quite interesting because the women were trusting their husbands the most. And then the second most was lady health workers. So what it helped in was providing validation for picking the high priority areas like LHW, that is the lady health worker. So so it is very important that to have these tools that are aiming at providing results that can complement each other. Initially when we found out that the most footfall was lying in the health houses of the lady health workers, it got further validated that even as a person, lady health workers are very, very trusted. The second was an interesting one, the findings husbands' involvement in abortion journey. Most of the women who mapped out their journey said that their husbands were the one who were going to the medical stores to acquire the pills. So it was not the women themselves, but their husbands, which opened another opportunity area for us. Now, this is one of the biggest struggles that a lot of us designers have, like issues like culture, stigmas, and taboos will always exist in such research. The thing is that the cultures and their values and traditions and further stigmas, taboos, you cannot do anything about them because they have been there for a very, very long time. And sometimes you are thinking in a very logical way, but then, the values are just different and you have to think around them then. The trick is to create tools that smartly gather the information you need. The first one that we did was the basket of medicines. Now, this was an interesting one because we suspected that some women will be very reluctant to disclose that they used an abortion pill. The idea became to just create a basket of OTC drugs and contraceptives and medical abortion drugs and see that which ones they pick. And we basically asked them to pick out the drugs that they most used. Turns out that one of the women naturally just picked up one of the abortion pills, and that is how we were identifying the MA users. What this helped us do was maintain a sense of covertness and confidentiality amongst women. It is very important that once we're talking to the women, it does not feel like it's an investigation. It should feel like it's a conversation. And in order to start that, and this basket really helped us do that. It sparked conversation when women picked up abortion pills. So once she picked it up, we asked them, where did she get it from? What happened when she used it? And why does she use it? Basic questions. Then gather clues through facial expressions when women observed the different medicines. Now, one of the interesting insight here was that a lot of women were picking, a lot of women who have been using contraceptives could not recognize the contraceptives in the basket. A lot of women, so that made us think that the level of information they have might just be even less than we had thought so. So the next tool came into play, where we put reference cards to initiate conversations. So once we suspected that the women know very little about their own bodies, one of the ways to find out was to place an image of female reproductive organ in front of them and see if they recognize that image. So a lot of women, they use the term bachadani for uterus. But when it comes to recognizing the image, there were a lot of women who could not. So the idea became, so that was actually quite problematic, because the existing brochures that we see, a lot of illustrations that are used there have this sort of imagery in them. And so really, how are they currently understanding this then, if they don't understand this is the uterus? Another thing was to place cards in front of them for each contraceptive and engage how receptive they are towards the written word and the visual cues. It was a very interesting finding that we also actually came across in previous projects, that these women are basically relying more on the real imagery as compared to illustrative imagery. So it helps you find out existing information they had regarding SRH and contraceptives, and to gauge how receptive women are to visual cues when using brochures with information on contraceptives. Now, one of the things is that one of the ways once we suspected that the information was very lacking amongst the women, we tried to find the source of it. Primarily, lady health workers are supposed to be counseling these women on contraceptive use. So we suspected that there was some sort of gap there in the counseling methods that made women not very aware of the contraceptives. So we took up these roles. So I was not actually a recently married woman, but I pretended to be, and I thought maybe that that once she starts counseling me, we can observe the ways that she is counseling. So we identified a lot of problems there. There was a lot of biased counseling where she was constantly asking me to not use a contraceptive because I'm a young married woman and I need to prove my fertility. And if I start using hormonal methods, it may cause infertility. That was one of the misconceptions that she was promoting. Another one was that she had very limited information on certain contraceptives as well. So there were a lot of problems there. And as you can see, we have placed a lot of tools in front of her. We just wanted to see which one she picks up as a medium for her counseling, because right now they are relying mostly on verbal counseling. We wanted to see if we give them something visual as well, will that improve their counseling methods or not? So this is an interesting one because we recently did a project with IDEO, and there was this one tool that they constantly use that is called sacrificial concepts, in which basically you are sacrificing a concept. So any initial ideas that you come up with at the start of the research needs to be tested there and then so that you can move on to the next ideas. And this is something that IDEATE has constantly done throughout their research. Our team has constantly been very active in that regard. It helped us to eliminate impractical concepts, validate or invalidate underlying assumptions, determine whether the reasons for rejecting a concept can be addressed. Now, one of the examples of a sacrificial concept was female counselors at pharmacies. So we suggested that that because females are very reluctant to talk to men about their SRH and contraceptive needs, what if we place female counselors in the pharmacies who at the time of purchase of abortion pills can counsel the woman on immediately adopting a contraceptive method. So what happens is that, that we tested it with the pharmacist, and the feedback was not very promising. A lot of them said that that women know what they're doing. They have already made their minds. You cannot change that. They will do whatever they want. Another one was that the gynecologist, the gynecologist should be left to such counseling and that they can't do anything about it. Now, the third one was the interesting one. He said that when the men are the ones who are coming to purchase abortion pills, well, why do you need a female counselor there? So at that time, we thought that we need to dismiss this idea. But later, turns out that this idea, once we started validating the reasons for rejection, a lot of other perspectives disagreed with that. For example, we talked to women about this particular idea, and a lot of women said that they will definitely go themselves to purchase the medicine had there been, or if there is a female pharmacist or female seller who is giving the drug. And they will definitely ask her about what to do and how to do it. And they will be more motivated to know about contraceptives. So there were some other concepts that we were testing, basically educational screen markups. We had bundled contraceptives. The idea was that at the time of purchase, either you can bundle the contraceptives with the abortion pills and give it to the people so that they know that the next step is to immediately start using a contraceptive. The other one was that you have to go through a certain screen-based test, in order to acquire the abortion pill. You can have the pill, but you need to know certain things about contraception first in order to get it. And these ideas were one of the less promising ones because there's a lot of feasibility issues that were associated with it. So now this project is an ongoing project. So just a little sneak peek into what we are doing currently is that there's a female pharmacy concept that is very promising right now. We were trying to make sure that within those communities, there are female-friendly spaces or stores or pharmacies where the women can feel comfortable going to when making a decision such as abortion. Then the other one is that at the time of purchase of misoprostol, at the time of purchase of abortion pills, what you are giving them is a voucher as well that says to avail this free checkup at a certain facility. And once they go to that facility, they can immediately be counseled on contraceptives. The third one is that we are still exploring. So even though we had narrowed our research down to 3 important places, it's important to know that in the end, the intervention needs to be a blanket intervention. We need to look at how the maximum areas that we can cover. And one of them is the backstreet clinics. A lot of women are still availing services from them and in those communities. And it's very important for us to filter these. And one of the major problems right now is to find the proper linkage because it is a very discrete channel. So there is no strict formula that applies to solving a wicked problem. And when we started doing this project, it was very clear that in theory, whatever we have read, it might not work, and especially once we started going in the field. So sometimes you are capitalizing on the resources that you already have. You are just have to be smart about it, quick about the testing, and most importantly, you have to be able to take risks whenever needed. So that is about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Summer, for a very interesting, I would say, brave and very well articulated talk. I think it was framed very well. The depth of the user research, the quality of the methodology, the tools employed in the field, the gamification of the user research, the visual presentation of the research methods in the field, and the rich scientific methodology around your work. It's highly encouraging, and I really appreciate that. I think as a researcher, really on the personal ground, I really feel I really feel happy and maybe excited that now in Pakistan we're a part of this design community where such projects are being talked about. And when I, of course, talked to Omer and you about this project, we always thought that we would love to have it. We would love to have from our platform so that people can really listen to these things, because it's very, very important. And we talk about these problems from a design lens. We've been talking about these things from a sociological lens, from a population perspective, from a very different perspective, from the governance issue, but I've never talked about these things from a design lens, and that brings a very different perspective, Summer. So really, really exciting about this. My first personal question, and then I go to some of the questions we will go to, was that I do a lot of research on with the bottom billion, next billion users, and also with pregnant females, and the people in different villages. So one phenomena which we always identified is that the family pressure they have when you're engaged with them in a user research. For example, आपने किसी pregnant औरत से interview करना है, तो कोशिश होती है आपको अकेले मिल जाए लेकिन साथ साथ आके बैठ जाएगी. Or for example, we were working on iron issues, in female pregnant females in Sialkot, और वहाँ पे 90% of the time a sass would come और वो कहेगी मैंने दूध भी देनी है, मैंने ये भी देनी है, मैं ये भी देनी है, आप नहीं खांदी. And as the sass would leave, the female would say, "नहीं ऐसा भी नहीं है, इतने अच्छे हालात भी नहीं है," and the husband would come in, and so it's a very sort of complex social equation sort of to deal with while solving this wicked problem. So my first question is, under this high level framework, how did you deal with these problems? How did you find people? How did you engage with them in the user research? How do you make sure that there's no noise and there's no pressure which can actually influence the data and bring noise to the data?
Okay, so one of the things that we need to see is that a lot of things we expect them to be there, but at a lot of times they're not. For example, we for a fact knew that a lot of women would be reluctant to share their abortion experiences. Turns out that they were quite open about it. And one of the problems that you are discussing right now mostly happened with the women who were recently married. The idea is that for those women, their mother-in-laws will do anything to avoid those women using any contraceptives to basically prevent that. And we had to sit with a few mother-in-laws as well and talk to the women about it. So the idea is that is when the tools come in handy as well. We have placed this information in front of them, and it's not necessarily about contraceptives, it's just about, let's say, the basket activity, the OTC drugs that we have placed in front of them. Any drug that they are picking up or they are not picking up, it's just an activity that they're immersing into. So it helps us break that ice to some extent as well. So there are a lot of, sometimes we can't, sometimes you just have to let go of that user. You go like, okay, this is something that the mother-in-laws, you have to be very respectful of that. If they're sitting there, you can't ask them to leave. So whatever you can make out of it, you do, and then you say thanks to them.
I completely agree. I think that they are part of the system. It's just that they have a different frame of reference while dealing with these issues. So it's not about wrong and right. It's just that it's a different frame of reference. I think there's a very interesting question here. Something that was also in my mind, that how do you ensure privacy in this whole user research context, because people are talking about some very serious closed issues, and they need to understand that all these things happening are under the strict privacy framework, and also they're the right ethical boundaries, the things you can ask and the things you can't ask, right? So there are things you just simply cannot ask from a user because of some ethical concerns, because they might say something and then they regret that they have said those things. So how do you ensure those things before the research, and then how do you exercise those things during the research?
So basically, once we go in one of the things that we have to constantly ensure the women is that this information is not going to leave this place, basically. So it's just going to be very, very confidential for them. Another thing is that initially we thought that it was a big barrier where women will never talk about this matter and all. The thing is that we think that, but in the rural communities, women are much more confident about talking about these matters as compared to the urban circle that this is one of our observations as well, that a lot of women were quite open about acquiring the drug, where did they get it from, talked multiple times about their experiences, talked about their contraceptive experiences, because they felt like we are the ones who can help them out. So at that point, the confidentiality for them is not a priority. So they are talking to us because they think we are going to help them out. And they really do need that help. And they constantly want to talk to us about it. So this is something that the privacy element for them is when they think that the society is going to judge them. So that is one of the things that we had to, so a lot, their abortion journey is highly affected by this one notion that if the information goes out, they're going to be judged by the society. And that is one of the reasons they're not going to the doctors, but to the medical stores, the husband's going to the medical stores because the woman does not want to reveal that she's doing any such thing. And another thing is that the husbands will always go to a pharmacist they have friendly ties with.
Excellent.
So these are the things that they are catering to in a lot of ways.
Excellent. So the people are, some of the people would like to connect with you. For example, you know, their chat window is open. People are saying they would love to support you in this female pharmacy network project. I think you can maybe connect with them after this talk and send a private message and connect with them. And there are also many interesting discussions right now happening on the chat window about the problems females face in rural settings as well as urban settings. So based on the number of questions people have been asking, one question which comes to my mind based on the question is that, do you see a very clear difference on this very specific issue between urban population and rural population, or you also see some commonalities between the two?
So there are certain, the point where the contraceptives have side effects, that is a very common belief around. It's interesting to see though that belief is quite common, that contraceptives will cause some sort of side effects, but the rural women are more ready to adopt contraceptives, invasive contraceptives like IUD that is inserted in the uterus, or there is other notions or other contraceptives like implants. They're just more willing to do that as compared to the urban women. And there are a lot of stats actually show that the urban population is relying more on condoms as compared to the others. So there's these sort of stats that we constantly see. One of the major problems that we had encountered was finding unmarried population. That is actually a part of our project to make sure that our project does not only restrict to the married population. Identifying the unmarried population and the fact that they are sexually active is in the rural setting is very difficult. It's beyond, we talked to only one person who is willing to walk us through her journey. Otherwise, nobody does. In the urban setting, like even in our social circles, a lot of people are more open about this as compared to the rural setting. So there are certain things that change as you go from urban to rural.
Excellent. So I think we'll just close here. There are a lot of other discussions happening in the chat window. I think we can't answer all questions, but one thing I saw a couple of times, that the role a husband has to play in this whole equation. And if you look at the recent literature also under ICT, you will see Summer also very elegantly talked about this, in her talk, that the husband have to play a big role. So you just can't, whenever you design for this, these kind of wicked problems, you don't design for a single user, you design for this user group where all these people are interacting with each other to solving high-level problems. And I think Summer also pointed that out. So we'll be moving to our master classes in 10 minutes. We just can't spend more time here. Thank you very much, Summer, again, for a very interesting talk. Really appreciate it. Keep the good work high, and go break all the barriers. It is very, very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot.